the industry. I started with a bit of a sales, account management and partnership background. I mean, I studied finance and law. I never thought I would become a salesperson. Whoever thinks they're going to become a salesperson, right? So I had that kind of an experience, but it was never pure play media intelligence. It so happened I got a job opportunity within sales and account management in a magazine company, what was then Australia's largest magazine company. And I really enjoyed understanding more about the media, and that was something that I really appreciated. From there, I learned more about book publishing, news media, and I had those kinds of corporate experiences being the sales and marketing director of Australian Associated Press. I then had the great enjoyment and privilege of moving to Singapore, where I was the general manager of Asia Pacific for Tiger Spike, which was a technology company, and then diversified into a SaaS model for a video services company that was part of the Facebook and Meta ecosystem. And it was only on my return to Australia that I was approached about this managing director role at MediaNet, as you said, Australia's leading media intelligence company. So it's been a bit of a diversified journey, a range of experience there across commercial media, partnerships, technology, business leadership, and now I'm in all things media intelligence, absolutely loving it, absolutely enthusiastic about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as you said, no one ever thinks they start off with sales. I'm sure we'll see that same shift occur with some of our other experts here today. It's been a recurring theme when we start to talk about people who are now leaders in this space. It is something that people saw a shift happening and decided to capitalize on that. So next up, we want to hear from Felicia.
Hi everyone, and greetings from Jakarta. First of all, thank you, P+. Thank you, Stanley, for a warm welcome, and thank you for initiating these very important discussions and for giving me the opportunity to take part of it. I started my career actually in market research and data analytics, coming from a statistics and mathematics background. And so I think working with data and working with numbers, making sense of numbers has been a major part of my career. And so 15 years ago, fate actually brought me to Maverick, leading PR consultancy in Indonesia. This year, we'll be celebrating 24 years. And at Maverick, that's where my journey in communications actually began. At the time when I first started, we measured success the way everybody did, through counting the number of clips, literally, and also reporting AVEs, or what we call it PR value here in this market. And for a while, that was quite sufficient. But then again, as we know, social media actually became a big part of our lives, and that changed how we communicate in a big way. And from there, we increasingly grew, dissatisfied with how we are measuring our work, how we actually reporting our work. So we'll be doing all this great campaign, and at the end of the day, we'll be reporting numbers that actually doesn't really tell us much. So from there, naturally, with my background, I was given a task to actually find out how can we actually measure better. So I began that mission to search for frameworks, for best practices, which then led me to IMAC, and that's how I think that's how it all began, basically. At Maverick, we committed to change. We're not just changing, how we report, but we actually change the way we work. We applied the integrated evaluation framework pretty much for every communications work that we do. We also build data-driven culture. So embedding data in every process of communications. And we brought that also approach to our clients. So that was 8 years ago now, and we're still learning. But we are true believers that better measurement leads to better communications. So yeah, so that's how I actually got into this role.
Thank you very much, Felicia, for sharing that with us. Next up, we would hear from Cyril.
Oh, my
Cyril.
mic was off. I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you, Stanley, for your words. This is very great. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to share with you guys. I'm francophone, so please don't mind my English. I speak French on a daily basis, so I'm happy to say that this theme resonates deeply with my work as a senior communications consultant, as well as my role at Comms of Africa, where we observe firsthand and how AI actually and algorithm are actually reshaping the media and communications landscape across our continent. Every day, I help institutions and brands navigate complex digital ecosystems, ensuring their message are not only well crafted, but also strategically positioned to reach the right audiences in Africa. Uh, in that continent, that beautiful continent where digital adoption is accelerating very fast, but information environment remain highly diverse, understanding how algorithm actually filter and amplify content is essential to maintaining relevance and impact, I may say. So trust and truth have always been at the core of my consulting practice, and they are increasingly central to digital communications. At Comms of Africa, we track trends, report on media dynamics, and analyze how audiences actually perceive information in real time. And this experience reinforces the fact that credibility cannot be automated, while AI and data insights help optimize concretely content delivery. Also, building trust still required human adjustment, I may say, and cultural sensitivity at a certain point, and transparent engagement with audiences, particularly in contexts where misinformation can spread quickly, and erode confidence in institution and brand. We can see it today in the geopolitical aspect of the thing, the geopolitical situation in the world, And finally, intelligence, both data-driven and experiential, is crucial in guiding effective communication strategies. In my work, I combine insight from algorithmic analysis with field experience and media monitoring from Comms of Africa to help clients anticipate challenges, craft responsive strategies, and also measure impact at this point. This intersection, Stanley, of technology, strategy, and human understanding is where communications also becomes truly effective. Messages are not only seen, but also understood, trusted, and capable of generating meaningful engagement across our various African markets. So this is what I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cyril, for that. So let's bring it back home here from Satira.
Hi, everybody. So for me, I would say my background, I did not study public relations or mass communications as it were. I studied English education. But I would say that I'd always had a passion for public relations. So when in 2015 I joined Earth Communications, it was an entertainment um, PR agency at the time. I that was what I would say that was the agency that kickstarted my journey in public relations. However, I would say my experience or the background in English education, you would study the nuances of language and perception. It helped with my writing, although my press releases at the time were quite poor, but your understanding of syntax, semantics, and when you want to write a very powerful story, I would say storytelling came easy for me because you would now start applying what you had in school when you want to use metaphors or you want to try to um, infuse certain stories. And that was what made PR interesting. And since I was even in entertainment, you would visibly see your stories going out. And after Earth Communication, I went to, I wouldn't say I stayed in agencies for long because I wanted to learn. So I didn't stay for too long. I was job humping at some point. So I went to a corporate PR agency from entertainment to corporate. So a corporate, that was Sesema, although the agency is no more, rest in peace to the founder. There, I had to now learn the nuances of corporate communications and external communications. And then I switched again to a music PR agency. And so these three agencies, I would say, informed or influenced what I do now. Because, corporate is very structured. Entertainment, you have everything, the glamour, the glitz, but might not be structured. Then music, sound, how do you tell stories when you hear certain sounds? And so when I wanted to start my own agency, first was because I wanted the freedom to communicate or help people communicate. Another reason why Satira Media focuses on a particular kind of clients is because of the interest. I noticed that's from experiences. We're working with different brands in various industries. I realized that there was something I enjoyed. So one thing about me is I love brands that are impactful. So I would always want to tell their stories, right? And especially with individuals, one thing I noticed is there are people I would meet or people that will come to me and they've done a lot of things, but they just find themselves scared to maybe amplify their voice. And I find myself telling them what to do. So that would I would say inform many of the things we do at Satira Media. So I would say our mission in Satira Media is to help individuals, impactful organizations, and consumer brands tell bold stories, help them navigate perception, and also help them build footprints through strategic communication.
And Satira, your mic is muted.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear
Yes,
me now?
Karen.
Oh, I didn't know. So I said my experience with English education, which helps with the semantics, syntax of language, and experience with working with different agencies helped me now know how to tell better stories. So for me, the way I approach storytelling in PR is quite different. it might be too much for some people. And maybe this is the first time people hear that I have an education background. So in education, they teach you listening skills, writing skills. And so for me, I tell stories in a different way. And I would say that was my journey or my background has affected the way I approach communications or the way I help brands today, basically.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thank you all for these reflections. I think it's fascinating to see how different career paths have somehow converged under the same umbrella, helping organizations communicate more effectively in a changing world. And I think that naturally leads us into our next area of discussion, the growing role of algorithm and data in shaping PR practice, right? And then we just want to jump into a few icebreaker questions, just to lighten the mood and help us understand exactly what it is we aim to understand today. And to kick us off, I'd like to start with Amrita. From your experience working with AI and automation, how would you say algorithms are changing the way we evaluate PR performance in today's landscape?
Yeah, thank you, Stanley, and really lovely reflections there from my fellow speakers and fellow panelists. I loved what you said there, Satira, about PR is about telling stories, right? And I'm going to use that, Stanley, I'm going to use that cue to answer your question in two very short ways, right? So PR is about telling stories, and in a way, AI, algorithms, technology, if you think about that, a story is a story, right? So the way part of me thinks the way PR performance is evaluated, it should be outcomes focused, irrespective of the platform or the type of technology we use or anything, right? You evaluate the performance of anything directly back to hopefully business performance, because we're all business people, and hopefully that business performance has some kind of financial or profit and loss positive impact, to the business. So there's part of me that says, there's a 50% of me that says AI and automation really shouldn't change the way we shape PR performance and the way it's evaluated, because it's the same. It's a story, it's effective storytelling. But the second part of me says it's really important to embrace new ways to evaluate PR, and AI and technology will fundamentally change the comms game and the PR games and the earned media games. So we need to start understanding concepts like AI visibility, AI sentiment, narrative intelligence, AI amplification, all these fancy sounding concepts. We don't need to overprocess them. We just need to start understanding them so we work out how to bring them into the way we measure PR performance. So that's my answer to your question.
Well, thank you very much, Amrita. You did justice to that. From what you said, I can pick out we need to embrace what already exists and we need to reinvent, because I think that's the only way we can truly grow in a space like this. Thank you so very much.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. But while algorithms are shaping measurements, there are also things that are transforming, and this is different from region to region, from audience to audience. And so I want to call on Cyril. You deal basically with editorials, and you are well versed in that space. From your vantage point, building a Pan-African communications platform, how do you see digital media and influence shaping PR narratives across continents today?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Did you get the question?
No, unfortunately. Can you come again, please?
From your vantage point, having built a Pan-African communications platform, how do you see digital media and influence shaping PR narratives across continents today?
Okay. I wanted to, before I answer this to this beautiful question, I wanted to bring an additional information to the great talk of Amrita, what she said before. I wanted to add something from my own perspective, if you may allow me to do so. Yes. I wanted to add that the growing role of algorithm and AI is really changing how we look at public relations today. Traditionally, we used to measure success, PR success, mostly through media coverage, the reach, and sometimes just the sentiment, you know. But now with AI, we have mostly through media coverage. Sorry, I'm confusing. I'm saying that we have real-time data today. Real-time data. We can see the engagement, the visibility, and even predict the trends, you know. And the challenge and also the opportunity is not just to look at the numbers as we do today, we tend to do. And it is very important to really interpret those numbers, because when you discuss with social media managers and community managers, they just focus on that. They do not interpret. So I just wanted to add that it is very important to interpret today, particularly in the African ecosystem, mostly the Francophone ones. Yeah.
All right. Would you still tackle your question, or that's all?
Hello?
Yeah, Cyril, is that all from you?
No. That's not all. That's not all.
Okay, so
I may also add that PR professionals, since I am interacting with various ecosystems across the continent, like the Francophone, the Anglophone, and the Lusophone, the approach of PR and the measurement and the AI stuff is completely different when you deal with Anglophone or Francophone and Lusophone. Let me take an example. In the Anglophone ecosystem, the work you guys are doing, for example, is being seen. You know, people tend to apply all this measurement, and they don't just rely on the likes and the impressions on social media. They go further. But in the Francophone ecosystem, for example, I may say West Africa and Central Africa, it is a bit different. People tend to rely mostly on all the interaction they see online and just design their reports according to that, you know. And in the Lusophone ecosystem, people don't really even do that. The ecosystem is not yet, I mean, not say mature, but it's not bigger like the ones we see in the Anglophone ecosystem. You know that those big Anglophone ecosystem count countries like Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and also Kenya. So the perception is completely different, and the approach as well. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much, Cyril. You raised a very important perspective, especially when you focus on the fact that reach isn't just all we need to focus on. We have to put context, credibility, as well as understanding the community in which we're dealing with. And I think that is important. And you also said something where you were piggybacking off what Amrita said, that data is readily available, and how we interpret that data is really the defining line between just vanity and actual meaningful insights. Thank you very much for that. To call on Felicia as well, from an analytic and insight perspective, how are PR professionals evolving towards more intelligent, insight-driven approaches to measurement?
Well, thank you for Cyril and Amrita. I certainly learned something new as well. So thank you for all those insights. I think to answer your question, Stanley, for sure, there is a real momentum, especially here in the Asia Pacific region. We are seeing more and more PR professionals moving away from the reflex of reporting volume and surface level numbers towards asking a more important questions. What is the actual outcome of communications, and how that actually contribute towards business goals? And I think we are talking less and less about how much coverage and how much more of that actually changed as a result. So I think this shift in mindset is quite significant, and I think that's very encouraging to see how the PR professionals in this region is actually embracing that. Another thing also, I'm seeing more and more integrations, and I think Cyril and Amrita already mentioned before, we are dealing with more data points now. So, rather than just treating media coverage, social listening, primary research as separate silos, we're seeing more and more professionals are starting to bring them together. Because I think this shift is very critical as we're dealing with increasingly complex media landscape. And of course, communications doesn't happen in one channel. It happens across interconnected ecosystems, which increasingly shaped by algorithm and of course, generative AI. So if we want to understand the real impact, we need to look at all those data holistically. So we can no longer treat them separately as a separate silo. And I think those two, connecting data to outcomes and integrating the data points, this is where we are actually moving, preparing ourselves to, to the environment that it's getting more complex to the future.
Thank you so very much, Felicia. You also raised about just an important point, focusing on the shifts that's currently happening within the industry, moving from just collecting data to actually making sense of this data, understanding all the data points and translating them into actual meaningful value. Thank you very much. Satira, just to hear from you, you work closely with brands, public figures, and you try to navigate today's digital landscape. From your experience, right, what does building trust really look like in such fast-moving and high visible environments?
All right. I would say it consists of like three things. And that's because of the way we consume information faster. So one thing is consistency of your voice. One way I tell my clients or brands is when we interact with your brand today, are we going to get the same feeling or the same experience we got today tomorrow? Are you consistent with what you are saying, the experience you deliver to your customers, or the behavior we find today, are we still going to find it tomorrow? And one thing I also noticed is these audiences, they are very quick to remember what you said the other time. That's why you would see screenshots of old video clips of what somebody has said 2-3 years ago, and somebody is saying it today. In Nigeria, we saw a case of a politician who had to it was, I would say, disgraced, because what he said some years ago was different from his take with an interview with Al Jazeera. Now people are looking at that. So you have to be consistent. Your voice has to be consistent. Your yes must be yes and your no must be no. And it has to be in 3 years. If you said yes 3 years ago, it should still be yes now. And maybe that's why people are angry with Trump, or for Nigeria, what our presidents, we are not happy with what he has said, because there hasn't been the consistency with what is being said. Another thing is the alignment of your communication and your behavior or experience. If you communicate one thing, for instance, if you say your product has so and so quality, when I interact with that product, am I getting that quality? It's beyond nice ads, nice pictures, or nice videos, right? What experience am I getting offline and online interacting with your brand? That's one thing I know affects people's trust level with either an individual or a brand. For an individual, if your communication, that's your nice pictures, the videos you have done, and when I meet you outside, you have a terrible behavior, it tells me one thing: I don't want to interact with you. I do not want to have anything to do with what you say. Or a brand who has given you a nice advertorial to draw you in, but now okay, you've been drawn in, I've bought your product. What's the experience like? So you know that thing of what you ordered versus what you got is simply that you need to be, your messaging has to align with your behavior. Right now, that is one way to build trust. Another way is that because of the way we receive information, speed, that's the speed of your communication, also has to be accurate. As I said, the audience are not as forgiving as before. So if you want to communicate something, especially during a crisis, in as much as you are to be fast, you also have to be accurate with whatever communication you are putting out there. So those are some of the things I've noticed, or the ways brands or individuals can build trust. One, you have to be consistent with your voice. Two, your message has to align, your communication has to align with your behavior, your experience, and the speed at which you communicate also has to be accurate. You can't say because you are putting out information fast, you're putting out the wrong information. That's what I would say basically in that.
Thank you very much. From what you've said, I think it's clear that trust is a very central theme to communications in today's industry, and how brands are structuring their narratives, structuring their media intelligence communications efforts as well. I think these all tie into building that trust and accountability. So at this juncture, I think we want to explore a little deeper into today's conversation. So I want to call back Amrita. With AI becoming more central to communications workflow, how should organizations rethink media intelligence in order to stay relevant and effective?
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. And I want to just build a little bit on what Sathira shared there by sharing for the audience today 2 bits of data that came out of recent research that MediaNet did, because I think they really help answer that question as well as build on what Sathira said. So we recently, Sathira talked a lot about trust. The theme of this topic is trust, right? And for brands, organizations, agencies in a media ecosystem, you use the word media intelligence there, Stanley. The media is a main stakeholder there. We need trust with the media as well as with our end audience, right? And if we use AI to produce content that goes through to the media, be that press releases, pictures, images, MediaNet's recent survey of 800 working journalists in Australia said that 73% of journalists will lose trust in AI-generated pictures, okay, and AI-generated content. So that's a really powerful data point. And then the other challenge we have is AI has a very long memory span. So another piece of research that MediaNet did at the end of 2025 shows that AI remembers, it cites and it brings back in its responses things that may have happened with your brand, things that may have happened in the news 2-3 years ago. Even if the journalist right now that might be writing about your brand doesn't reference it, the AI will when you ask it a question, right? So here we are battling trust on one side with the journalist, and then also battling our brand trust when it comes to the way these AI models work and how much information they have access to go back and to remember. So I have 2 or 3 very interesting pieces of research and data around this lines, and if anyone in the audience would like to hear a little bit more about that, would like to receive those papers, I'm very happy to share that as well. And so I really want to kind of challenge everyone listening about their concept of media intelligence. That was your question. So what is something intelligent, right? It's an insight that leads to some kind of action, some kind of a why, some kind of a decision making piece as well. So I would say it's important through the lens of AI to harness it, I think, to better understand media, non-media brand data, and see if you can get some actionable insights that let you be a little bit more proactive, what this means rather than reactive and backwards looking. But I think, you know, your question there, Stanley, you said, how do we rethink media intelligence? I think we have to widen the scope of what media intelligence actually is as well, because there's many layers to it now, rather than the simple original brand, news, media, consumer. It was very linear, and now it's really widened what media intelligence could mean anyway, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Mr. I think I agree with you when you say this landscape is more fragmented and dynamic. And so focusing more on significance, especially with regions and other nuances that exist, would really help in understanding how intelligence helps. Thank you so very much for that. Satira, I would like to call you back. Looking specifically at Africa's communication landscape. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, looking specifically at Africa's communication landscape, what key trends should PR professionals be paying more attention to when managing influence and reputation?
All right. There's so many trends, but one thing I would say is that influence has now been decentralized. In the influence, I mean, has now been decentralized in the sense that everybody with a social media platform can influence the other person with the kind of content they have. And that's why the digital reputation has now been normalized, where we cannot treat social media as second place in terms of communication or dissemination of communication or where to get your information, because a situation on Twitter, right, or TikTok, like what just happened recently in Nigeria, where there was something it was not a good news though, from a local place, just from Twitter, and it has spread to the mainstream media, right? So just a click of the button can influence people's conversation about something. That's one thing we need to consider, so that when we're building campaigns, we need to understand that we are treating social media as a primary channel of communication and not secondary anymore. So it's, you know, before you get a particular news about a brand, either you have to switch into the news or listen to a radio program. Right now, if the information is out, almost everybody has heard of it, and even beyond your local environment, the world has heard of it. For instance, what happened last year, Anthony Joshua had an accident. This thing happened in Lagos, Nigeria, not even between Lagos and Ogun State. Within hours, the world people had covered the story and all that. So we need to be conscious of this decentralization of influence and ensure that we are paying more attention to our social media platforms, ensuring that our communication is right on those platforms, and knowing that we can't treat social media as secondary as we used to before. Another thing I noticed is, or trend I've noticed, is the accountability of different communities, right? Many communities have been held accountable to certain things. You cannot make certain decisions, or you cannot, as a brand, you cannot be silent in taking certain decisions because you will be held accountable. So for instance, if there was a recent case of a rape festival in Delta State, as an NGO, you cannot be silent even if it doesn't concern you. You have to take a stand and kick against that. You cannot be silent. So that's one thing I have found out, that there's this sudden rise of community accountability across Africa. So either religious organizations are held accountable for certain things. That's why people will call out pastors, they will call out leaders, they will call out even community leader. I remember when there was a situation with a Nigerian musician, right? And somebody had to call out a community leader whose community empowers women to come and give our opinion, or let the world know our opinion about the particular issue. So we've gotten to that point. Another thing I have discovered is, because of the rise of AI generated content, the need to show credibility is on the high. Like everybody, when you have we been in a situation where we're watching a video and you're not sure if you're watching an AI generated content or a real content? So now it's now very necessary that as a brand, the human storytelling, the human-centric storytelling has to be a focus. I know before now, there wasn't roles like, okay, director of storytelling, or roles like content creation department, even within a comms organization in a company. But now we're having that because of the increase of AI-generated content and the need to tell authentic stories. So those are some of the trends I have seen so far in PR that we as PR professionals, we cannot ignore, basically.
Thank you very much, Satya. Very insightful conversation from you there. I think you did proper justice to that question. Even stating that the need for us to stop considering social media as a secondary arm of media was a very important thing to note. Felicia, from your experience in analytics and insights, how can PR teams strike the right balance between data-driven measurements and the more human elements like trust, credibility, and even storytelling?
Well, thank you for that question, Stanley. I really love this question because this is actually part of my day-to-day work, when looking into the data. But I like to start with this actually. Let's admit it for everyone here that large numbers give you a feel-good feeling, right? Very often we look at, okay, well, an escalated number that we normally take it for reporting and treat that as a success. But I think we need to remember that those numbers only tell one part of the story, right? So metrics like reach, volume, share of voice, or impression. I think my team here, they know how I feel about impressions. And they do have their place. They help track trends, understand the scale, and spot some movement. But at the end of the day, they're very descriptive, right? They describe the activity, what we actually do. They don't describe the outcome. And increasingly, they are also influenced by algorithms, which means that these numbers can look impressive while telling us very little about the real human attentions or the response. So the real signals actually comes when you start digging deeper into the data, looking into the sentiment, trying to detect the signals that is there, trying to track the narrative, attitude that may emerge. So instead of just counting, we start looking into the quality of the news coverage, the conversations that the audiences are talking about, what are the beliefs are being reinforced or challenged, right? So these are the layers that reveal whether your communications are genuinely building credibility and trust or simply just generating some noise. So it's not a question of choosing between quantitative and qualitative data. The two need to work together hand in hand. They are complementing each other. Quantitative data gives you the scale and the trend, and while the qualitative analysis gives you meaning and the context. So I think these are the very important combinations when we look at data, and that the two must be balanced. And I think this will become increasingly crucial with the generative AI, algorithm that's actually generating a lot of this data. So the ability for us to actually track those balance and keeping that balance it's what giving you really good measurements and evaluations.
Thank you so very much, Felicia, for that. Well said. Picking from what you said, even the most sophisticated analytics, it still needs real storytelling to resonate. And it still needs a message embedded in it. It still needs to be understood at the end of the day for it to make sense. Thank you very much for that. To call on Cyril to engage us once more. In such a competitive media environment, how can brands tell authentic stories while still achieving strong visibility and influence?
Well, today's fast-moving media environment, maintaining authentic and credible storytelling while achieving visibility is about aligning messages with real audience expectations and trusted voices. For instance, during public health campaigns in Africa, like let's say the polio vaccination initiative that took place in Nigeria, or another example, the malaria awareness campaign supported by the World Health Organization in Ghana. I may say that success has come from working closely with local health authorities and community leaders. The authority comes from respecting local knowledge, and communicating in ways that are culturally relevant. People must understand, your message and feel impacted with it. Data and media intelligence, according to me, helps brands to understand which messages resonate truly and through which channels concretely. Another example in this case are the fintech companies in Kenya. They are flourishing, they are booming. If I look at M-Pesa, for example, they often use local media and partnership with community organizations to ensure their communication reach the right audiences effectively. Insight from these channels allow them to concretely amplify visibility without compromising their credibility. And finally, I may add that credibility is built through transparency and consistency. Very, very important. And brands and organizations that communicate openly, I repeat, brand and organizations that communicate openly, respond promptly to concern, and maintain a steady presence over time, strengthen their trust with their audience. Just like Satira said before, she took very good and relevant example about that, And in short, in our continent, as elsewhere in the world, in Asia, in Europe, where I am, visibility works best when it is grounded with authenticity, cultural understanding, and I may add, continuous engagement. I strongly believe in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cyril. These are all excellent insights that we received from our speakers so far. One clear thing about today's discussion is that the industry is undergoing a significant shift. One where technology, measurement, influence, and storytelling are becoming intertwined more so than ever. And then it's up to us as PR professionals to be able to tell the difference and to be able to pull out the key details of media and PR engagement. So we want to go deeper into the nitty-gritty, more directed questions that focus more on our industries that we all play in. Let's begin with Satira. Satira, you work with brands and public figures, right? How do you assess whether narratives are genuinely resonating with the audience it's intended for?
Oh, thank you. So as I think Felicia said something about qualitative and quantitative assessment, right? And we've gotten to a point where we cannot rely on just one measurement metrics to assess the impact of your communication. You have to use both qualitative and quantitative measurements to assess it. And one thing I always look at is, first of all, the engagement quality. Is not, we've gone past, oh, we wanted, what's the reach, or what's those things we usually look at before. Now it is, what's the nature of conversation, interaction between this communication. For instance, I love I think it was the Eat Burger challenge. I can't remember it exactly, where different fast food like Burger King, KFC and all that, where they had to bring their CEOs to try out their food, right? And that way telling your customers that you get quality burgers from us and all that. And we see how that engagement helps. How do you now determine the level of quality? So it's beyond likes, it's beyond impression. What's the conversation around that communication? That's one thing we have to start measuring. And before I even continue, we need to understand that data, right? This data that we talk about gives us the direction of how our communication in general needs to go. It is the compass. I would say data is the compass, while storytelling is that connector with what we do, right? Another thing is the perception. What's the perception with the message that you have intended over time? That's one way we evaluate how authentic our narrative is, right? Has it caused a shift in behavior? Has it caused and impacted the business outcome or thereabouts? Another thing is, how have people adopted our narrative and interpreted it into their own? And one example I would give is, for instance, a brand brings out a jingle or something. It's beyond just telling everybody what the jingle is all about or how to promote that brand. Are people dancing to it, creating covers out of it, or creating memes? We see when a brand brings out something, people are creating memes out of it. It's changing the culture, or conversation is even leading to more conversations about something. So I would say those are the ways we measure if what we've put out as a brand or an individual is authentic, right? Those are some of the ways we need to measure it. Or personally, that's how I have evaluated the authenticity of the narrative I put out there.
Thank you very much for that, Satira. And you make a fascinating intersection of data, intuition, as well as audience understanding and interpretation. Moving to Amrita, from your work in media intelligence and your leadership role within AMEC, how do you see AI shaping the future of PR measurement frameworks globally?
Thank you, Stanley. And, it's been really interesting to hear Cyril and Satira talk about some of their experiences. As you know, I am in a different region. Felicia is also in a different part of the Asia Pacific region. And I think your question there about measurement frameworks globally is a very interesting and a very important one as well for our industry. I think as a global industry, we have an obligation to always adapt our frameworks to suit new platforms, new technologies coming out. I remember many years ago when the Barcelona principles were updated to account for social media, and the AMEC Barcelona principles were recently updated last year to take into account certain things like AI. But PR measurement, it's basic tenets, in my opinion, it's basic frameworks. We need to remain as much true to them, right? About impact and outcome means authentic, meaningful, and transparent frameworks that are adaptable to different markets and geographies, because that's what a framework is. It's not a rule, it's something that can be adaptable. And we've heard from Cyril, from Felicia, from Satira, different perspectives from their very specific markets. So technology is developing at different pace in certain markets, and so is the understanding of PR measurement and effective, authentic PR measurement. So while globally and locally, we need to keep up. We have to understand the maturity levels of what is PR measurement in different markets, what are the different data and metrics people use, and then educate appropriately. Underneath all of that, those core tenets of PR measurements, the importance of outputs and outcomes rather than just, inputs and things, they remain, but they will factor in the AI piece. How can we not, right? Because our frameworks have to develop. We have to remember that we do have some really core guiding North Stars, and we should stay true to them. That's my personal opinion anyway.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Even while I was asking the question, another question came up in my mind, that when companies or organizations start to adopt AI tools, a challenge will definitely emerge. How do they, move beyond that challenge? And hearing you say that holding on to traditional models, which are the guiding lights for most of the engagement, most of the work we do, but these frameworks can shift from place to place, from region to region, from campaign to campaign, and understanding that is really essential. So I think you answered two questions there.
I'm happy to hear that, Stanley. Thank you.
So I want to move quickly. You're welcome. I want to move to Felicia. With your extensive background in analytics and insights, what frameworks should PR professionals adopt today to ensure their measurement is both accountable and accurate?
I really love this question, Stanley, and I may be slightly biased here. And of course, I'm representing AMEC as well, together with Amrita here. I would say the AMEC Integrated Evaluation Framework is the framework that all PR professionals should use. I think this is something that we all should keep in our pocket. But I'm not just saying that because I represent AMEC as well, but we have used it and we have tested it, and it's proven, and it is something that it has changed our culture. It has changed our culture from just counting clips to basically start being strategic and using this framework not just for measuring and evaluating our communications effort, but essentially this framework is for you to plan, and it is a planning tool, and this is something that as today we are working within the media landscape that is very different from even a decade ago, right? With the algorithms and the AIs coming into place. So you need a robust framework that can actually be flexible enough, and I think Amrita has mentioned this, that can be used and suited to every, in any region, and can be also implemented flexible enough to suit any level of maturity in terms of measurement. Because what it does give you a guidance. I call it a compass. Actually, I think Satira was mentioning, talking about compass before. It does guide us, linking for every activities that we do to the communications objective. So what is it that we are trying to achieve? What does success looks like? And how is that actually supporting the organizational goal, the business goal? So, and this AMAC integrated evaluation framework, it is grounded by Barcelona principles. I think Rita already mentioned before, and it's a 7 principles that gets updated periodically to suit to the latest trend of what's happening in the communications landscape. So I think when using this framework and applied consistently, it allows us to clearly connect communications to the real outcomes, and in many cases to see the real impact. And that's ultimately what gives us the communications credibility.
All right, thank you very much, Felicia. While I still have you on that conversation, I want to build on that. How can PR teams move from traditional metrics which we outlined, like reach and impressions, to actually demonstrate real business impact?
Sorry, Stanley, can you repeat that question again, please?
How can PR teams move beyond traditional metrics like reach and impressions and actually demonstrate real business impact?
Okay, well, thank you for that questions. And the thing is, with transitioning, with any changing to something that is new, we just have to start. All right. So I think for a long time, this industry have been using, the same metric, this one formula that has been used to count our success, and it does sometimes can get very overwhelming at the start. But I think the key thing is, and this is, I think, I'll share what we have done at Maverick about 8 years ago now. We used the framework to get started, right? The same framework. And what we did first is basically follow it through and change the language, right? Change the language internally from before, when we said, okay, well, how many news coverage that we get published from that activity? But we start asking the question, what is the objective? Why are we doing this event? Why are we doing this activity, right? Even if we don't have the answer, even if we don't have, we are not ticking all the boxes, but at least we get the habit of it, because I think that is the most difficult part, is changing the habit, right? So, and then when we go through it and be consistent and continue to push through, and from that, and that is actually combining with start looking beyond just the quantitative data, beyond just the reach, right? We start looking into the social conversation. We start digging into, trying to detect the signals, right? So all of that runs in parallel, right? So slowly, it is a step-by-step approach. I would say that start with a baby step. And from there, then we start introducing new insight in our report. And that's exactly what we did, right? Even if we didn't have it completed, like the full report to begin with, but at least we started. Because at the start, we decided that we just couldn't wait, because technology will continue to evolve. It's going to continue to advance in a really, really fast speed, right? So the only way to do that, and we just have to get in there and just do it.
Thank you very much, Felicia. I'm picking what you said, and I think Amrita also harped on that. These frameworks themselves need to evolve alongside the technology and the change that is currently happening. Thank you so very much for that. Cyril, through Comms of Africa, you've helped build a platform that amplifies conversations around communications all over the continent, right? From your perspective, what role do editorial platforms and thought leadership play in building trust within Africa's communication ecosystem?
Thank you, Stanley, for this question. Well, editorial platforms and thought leadership media are key to building trust and credibility in Africa, you know. Unlike social media, which spreads misinformation quickly but often without verification, established outlets like ours provide authority and context that audiences rely on. Take platforms like the Africa Reports in the English-speaking area, or Business Day in Nigeria, or I may say in the Francophone area, you take Jeune Afrique, you take Agence Ecofin, or Sika Finance. Being featured in this type of media, you know, signals legitimacy and reinforces a sort of expertise. It's especially important in markets where misinformation spread fast and audiences seek reliable sources. You know, in our continent, people rely mostly on WhatsApp. You know, people share a lot of information through WhatsApp. Sometimes fake information, the majority of the time, most of the time is fake information, not source information. And people rely on that. People listen to that, you know, and this is how crises come easily for brands, for public personalities, and so on, even for government. Thought leadership contents like interview, analysis, or in-depth article let organizations show real knowledge and insights. In Africa, invest in kind of content engage audiences more meaningfully and build lasting trust because they are contributing to important conversation rather than just broadcasting messages. I will take two examples, if you may allow me, Stanley. The first one is an article, a Tribune that a senior communications manager, I mean the director of communications of EcoBank, you know EcoBank, right? She recently wrote an article, a Tribune, about internal communications versus HR, trying to explain that internal communications is different from HR, and HR people should not just take it and just address it without having the competencies, you know. And that article actually brought in a lot of discussion and also credibility among communicators who really understood what she wanted to state, to film me. And the article has been published by other newspapers in Angola, Rwanda, right? It has also been published in Togo, in Mali, in Cameroon, and in Senegal, without, and also in France, without any PR. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Just the credibility of the media. You feel me? And we also published something about Benin recently. Their strategy, you know, Benin is doing a lot of nation branding, has been doing it recently through the leadership of President Talon. And the article was analyzing basically the nation branding, the strategy behind it, etc., etc. And many students who were actually writing their essays, their memoir on that topic, got a lot of material, and they were very happy because these materials were sourced material, sourced information coming from the government itself. You feel me? And this is very important to fight fake news, to fight also AI generated information or all of those stuffs. So according to me, it is very, very important. Digital platform and thought leadership media are key to building trust and credibility in Africa.
Thank you very much. Cyril. You pointing out that credibility is very key, especially in an environment where audiences are constantly being exposed to information from countless number of sources. Having one credible source or having credibility behind your platform or behind your media engagement is something that is very essential, especially in today's media landscape. I want to move back to Amrita. As more organizations begin to adopt AI-driven tools, right? How can they ensure that data generated actually leads to meaningful insights rather than just simply producing more numbers?
I love this question, Stanley. I really do, right? And numbers are numbers, data are data, metrics are metrics, right? I feel like they always have been, they always will be, irrespective of where they are generated from, irrespective of whether AI tools are involved in their generation or not. So while at MediaNet, we absolutely, yes, we have integrated AI and automation internally into our operations and the way that we are doing some of our measurement and our analyses. And we've integrated it into part of our client-facing services as well. It's very responsible AI, as it were. It's always with the human in control layer. Because in my opinion, it's the human IP, it's our knowledge up here that delivers the strategy and the insights. For now, anyway, but it's that human perspective and having my team move further up the value chain to explain not just the so what, but also about what's next and what they should be doing from those metrics and those data, because otherwise it's just data for data's sake. And I'm going to give you a small example, if I may. One of our clients is a leading university in Australia, one of Australia's most prominent universities. And for some reason, a lower ranked university was achieving more of those basic metrics that we heard Felicia and some of my fellows speakers talk about earlier, just the number of mentions, the number of pickups, the sentiment of it. But it was the specific analyst, the human that was working on this client's project that identified this client's key spokesperson did not have a strong relationship with the national broadcasting channel of Australia, and their competitor university did. And we were able to give actionable insights and intelligence back to the university client of ours that said that these were the ways that they could look at lifting their relationship with that particular broadcast channel so that they achieved the level that they needed in terms of the outcomes that they were looking for. Now, while AI, if we just use AI, maybe it would have gotten us part of the way there. It was the specific human layer, the human knowledge piece that was able to take the data, which was just about the amount of broadcast coverage they got and the sentiment of the broadcast coverage, and turn it into something meaningful and actionable as well. So I think that that's really why data generated by AI still, or AI tools, it still needs the human in the loop, the human in control, the human perspective to make it something more than just metrics or more than just numbers.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Data alone isn't intelligence. It is what we do with that data.
Absolutely. Well said. Yes.
Thank you very much for that. Satira, I would like to call you back into this conversation. In reputation management, how do you balance hard data with storytelling so communication remains both strategic as well as relatable?
Sorry, I didn't know that my mic was off. So I said, how do we balance data and storytelling? First, there needs to be that understanding that data is, we need to see data as the direction, like the compass. You're going somewhere, right? You need a compass to know where to navigate and where to go. Like Felicia said, how do we know why we are doing this event or why we want to do a campaign instead of writing a press release? That's what data does for you. Storytelling creates the connection, right? Storytelling connects you, creates that emotional connection between the brand and your different audiences. So how do we now marry these two together or create balance? Is that we see data as the director or the tool to give us the direction on how to tell our stories, where to tell our stories, who should hear about our story. Do you understand? That's how you create the balance. And you can't do one without the other. You can't say you're just creating data and not telling a story. You can't just say you are telling a story without understanding who should listen to your story, where you should actually, what platforms you should actually use for that particular story you're telling. So I would say we should see data as the director or a tool that gives the direction, and storytelling as the tool that creates the emotional connection between your audiences. So that's what I would say, or how we can create that balance.
Thank you very much for your perspective on that. I would like to thank our guests once again. Have all rendered very thoughtful perspectives on the questions put forward today, giving us insights into this through even little storytellings of our own cases where certain frameworks have worked for us. But before we close, I would like us to leave our listeners here today with something to reflect on. We're going to talk more about what we see PR looking like towards the end of 2026. What is the future of PR? What is currently happening in PR? What are the things that we need to really focus on and things that might need to change? And so I would like to call on Felicia first off. What is one key capability PR professionals should develop if they truly want to master measurement and evaluation?
Okay, thank you, Stanley. And I think I'd like to quote a little bit from the Page Society in one of the research about the future of communications professionals. So the role of the chief communications officers going forward is not just managing reputations, but as a strategic counselor, helping the organization navigate and adapt to the world that we are in today. So I think with that, if I can have one new capability or capability that we need to build upon, is for sure is having the data literacy. Data literacy paired with critical thinking. And this is not just about becoming it's not about becoming a data scientist, but about developing enough literacy to understand which data points are relevant to your communications objectives and which are just noise. And I think critically, it's about questioning what you see, asking the numbers, questioning the numbers, because I think we live in the world where we just, for the first time, we're dealing with so much data, right? But not all of them is actually relevant. So how can we actually use some of the data, being able to choose what is relevant, and being able to use that to our advantage to prove the value of communications that we do. So I think that would be one that would be crucial going forward.
Thank you very much, Felicia. That would definitely come in handy. Cyril, I would like you to give advice to emerging communication professionals in Africa who want to build influence. And I remember you touched on credibility earlier. What advice would you give to emerging professionals who want to build influence as well as credibility in their field?
Thank you, Stanley. Yes, my advice to young communications professionals in Africa. First, master the fundamentals, but don't stop there. Strategy, storytelling, media relations, and digital tools AI and also data. All of it matters today, so they should take that into consideration. Second, they should stay curious, follow the trends, watch what top brands are doing, like Coca-Cola, Nike, etc. Are doing. Even in Africa, MTN and all of those brands are doing. Follow the trends, as I was saying, watch what top brands are doing. Read trusted platforms like Coms of Africa. Yeah, you can read articles on Coms of Africa. We do articles, interviews, portraits, analysis. The latest analysis we publish is the one about Will Smith, who is actually currently in Angola for the nation branding of the country, and this is very full of insights and statistics. But remember, don't just copy global trends. Influence comes from understanding your audience and the local context. And third, and lastly, make yourself visible. Speak out, share your ideas, write, network, participate in events like these events, okay? And also share your thoughts on LinkedIn. Discuss with people at Felicia, at Amrita, at Satira on LinkedIn. Ask questions to them. It is very important. Visibility isn't built overnight. It comes from showing expertise, being consistent, and staying authentic. Very, very important. Staying authentic. That is my best part. I think that doing that over the time, people start to listen, People listen, people see what you do. Even if they do not interact, they see. And they start to trust you with time. That's how you build real influence in African communications, basically. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Siri. That is incredible and valuable guidance that you present to the next generation of communication experts. Amrita, looking ahead, what is one major shift you see PR professionals needing to make in order to remain relevant in an AI-driven world?
So I'm going to say one major shift that they should make, Stanley, and I know you said one, but I'm also going to say one grounding that they should have as well. So a non-shift, as it were, if I'm allowed to answer that question. I think one shift, and I believe one of my fellow speakers used that word, Cyril, you might have used it in one of your answers. I think it's very important to be curious and experiment. I think that is incredibly important to stay relevant. You have to understand what's out there, so you understand what can and can't be used for you, for yourself, for your role, for your clients, if you're agency side, for your own organization, if you're on the brand side. So I think it's very important to experiment and to stay curious, and we need to bring more curiosity into our mindset as PR and comms professionals, not just churn and burn through what we do as well. So that's one kind of major shift. The non-shift, or the grounding, if I can explain that as well, we must always remember the importance of trust and truth and authenticity, and that we are the guardians of that for the organizations, brands, the spokespeople that we represent, and the media. And through the media, the consumers rely on that trust and that authenticity and that guardianship. So while we experiment, we must remember and not get too swayed and seduced by all the great, fanciness of technology, that we play a very pivotal and important role in the whole communication and media ecosystem. And the holding of trust is a really special place. And I hope we never move away from that as PR and comms professionals.
Stanley, are you on the line?
Did Stanley drop off, or maybe he has some?
I think he has some network issues.
Yes.
Maybe we should continue with the same question. I think it's the last question, right? Yeah. I think we should move on while his internet is coming back.
From Statera now, respect to what advice does they have for young communication professionals on the continent? How they
I can't hear you.
Sir, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Fine,
can
fine.
now.
Okay, yeah. So since Stanley seems to have first communication challenge, technology challenge, maybe we should hear from Satira now. What advice do you have for young communication professionals on how they can get on top of their jobs and make the right impact?
As all the speakers have said, we have to be curious. Right now, you have to be curious. Our roles have shifted into now strategic guidance. So you have to be curious to understand what's going on in your environment so you can be able to advise your brands, as if you're internally with the brands or external as an agency. Because if you're not curious, you would not know what the latest trend is and you would not be able to advise rightly, because at the core, anybody can write a press release with the good prompts. Anybody can edit their videos or all that. But where you come in, or what makes you different, is how you advise. Okay, instead of doing a video, can we do this event or do a thought leadership piece? That is where the advisory or strategic thinking come in. So that's what I would say. Stanley, you dropped off at some point.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I apologize. I was kicked out of my session. I would assume, Satira, you were answering the question, if you heard the question I was asking.
He asked me a different question, so I don't know if you have something different.
Okay, I want you to give advice basically to organizations who still underestimate the value of PR measurement and evaluation.
In 2026, as a brand, if you underestimate measurement and evaluation, I don't really know what to tell you, but you're doing wrong. That's what I would say. Because as Felicia said, you are actually doing wrong, because how do you know why you should do this event or why you should do this campaign at this time and all that? So I would say, do not take PR measurement and evaluation as one of the core systems of your communication, right? It should be part of you. It should be one of the things you put as priority, because as I said earlier, it is the direction. It gives you the direction on where your communication has to go at that particular time. And I remember Felicia saying, why would it makes you understand your why. If you do not measure, if you do not analyze, if you do not put measurement and evaluation as a priority, it's like walking around headless with, I know this African phase, walking with headless chicken and all that, with no direction. But if you ensure that you take measurement and evaluation seriously, it makes you communicate rightly. You know when to communicate. For instance, now, as for me in my agency, many of our male clients, we toned down their communication because March is Women's Month. It would be counterproductive as a man. You want to compete with Women's Month. It would make sense. But data tells you, okay, March is where women have to have more conversations or activities are geared towards women. So as a man or as a male thought leader, I'm not saying don't communicate, but certain things have to be toned down in March for you. That's where measurement and evaluation comes in. For instance, Ramadan just happened. As a brand, how are you communicating? Okay, if you're a food brand, this is where to communicate to maybe your Muslim audiences and tell them, especially if you're a beverage brand, right? You know that this is the peak of your communication. Many Muslims, when they break their fast, they will need to use your product. How are you communicating? If you don't have data, if you're not measuring, if you're not listening, social listening, you won't have the right communications to do. Another thing I would say is stop reporting activity, report impact. That's one thing I've noticed. Many of us, oh, we had this event, but what's the impact? What was the outcome of that event that you did? Did it lead to more clients? Did it lead to more inquiries about your business? Did it ensure facilitate more partnerships? Those are the type of things you measure, not just the activity. Because one thing we see is reports. When we're saying campaign reports, oh, we had this number of coverages, we had this number of people attend, but we're not looking at what's the business impact. Did we make profit in that year? There was a campaign I did in 2021. It was beyond even 2024. We did a film project and all that. It was beyond getting media coverages and all that. That year, the movie had 16 nominations in just one award category. That's something I can report. Based on the way we communicated, we were able to attract the film community that ensured so number of nominations. Isn't just beyond the activities you do. What's the impact of your communication? That's another advice I would say I would give to an organization.
Thank you very much, Satira, for that. Just emphasize that the importance of measurements, saying it keeps brands from being tone deaf, especially during certain situations, how to guide campaigns so that they can resonate better with the intended audience. Thank you very much for that. We have a few questions in the chat box, and if anyone else present has a question to ask, please drop in the chat box. I'll take 2 or 3 questions here that are directed at our speakers. Thankfully, we still have some time to deal with that. So the first question here is for Cyril. How can organizations better balance global visibility with authentic local relevance?
Is the question for me?
Yes.
Okay.
How can organizations?
Okay. I may say that balancing
global
visibility
with authentic local relevance.
Okay, balancing visibility and local relevance and also credibility is all about strategy and authenticity. As Amira said before, it's not enough to just be seen. You know, organizations need to make sure that they communicate. They communicate is accurate. What they communicate actually is accurate. It's also transparent and aligned with their values. High visibility without credibility can quickly backfire, especially in fast-moving digital environment like we can observe today in Africa. One approach is to prioritize trusted channels and voices, as I said before. For example, in Africa, partnering with credible media outlets, depending on where you are, you know, either Francophone or Arabic in the Northern Africa or Anglophone in the Southern Africa. And you also, besides the partnership with credible media outlets, you can also collaborate with respected community leaders or thought leadership platform like Jeune Afrique in the Francophone area, as I said before. And this can amplify visibility to reinforce trust instantly. This can also ensure that your message reaches the right audience and it is perceived as reliable because of the credibility of the major outlet you partnered with, you know. And finally, organizations should measure impact beyond reach. look at engagement, sentiment, and audience response. You know, being visible is useful only if it contributes to long-term trust and meaningful connection. In other words, visibility works best when it supports credibility and rather than replacing it. Yeah, this is what I may say.
Thank you very much, Cyril. I hope that just this the question. I'll deal with one more for Amrita. At what point does data stop informing decisions and start misleading them?
Yeah, great question there. Thank you for the audience for asking this one. And I once heard a very good saying from a colleague of mine in a previous role, and it went something like this, Stanley. You can get the data to tell you anything you want it to, right? And I'm sure everyone on this call would understand what I mean by that. I think data is always a valued and important input into any measurement, any evaluation framework, whether you're measuring media or you're measuring just, you know, another part of your business or another part of your team or even another part of what you're doing in your personal life. Data is a very important input, but it's not the be all or and end all, because you can in a way get the data to tell you everything. So, or anything you want it to. Data can be misleading, as the person who asked this question has said. So from my perspective, data is important, but it's how you evaluate it, the human lens, and then what you choose to do about it. That's where the real value comes in, and that's where the power lies in tapping into the numbers and the metrics.
Thank you very much for that, Amrita. I also have one for Felicia here. What is one insight from your region that the rest of the world is overlooking?
Oh, that's really big questions, actually. I think, okay, our region, when we talk about Asia Pacific, and it's actually huge. So I just did a quick check. It's actually making up 60% of the global populations, right? So what would be something that the rest of the world overlook? I would say we are made up of so many different markets, different cultures. I would say probably representing in hundreds of different cultures, languages, right? And also when it comes to communications, the landscape within each of the market in the region are very, very varied. They're totally different, right? So I think if we link this to how we measure, how we evaluate, when we look at it from the perspective of maturity, they can get very, very different, right? So some market, they may still be, you know, traditional media may still be quite dominant. However, I think all of the markets across, to my knowledge, are transitioning. But I think understanding those differences, that would be the real insight.
All right, thank you very much for that, Felicia. I saw Philip raising his hand. I don't know if he still has a contribution for us. Okay. So we'll deal with one more question for Amrita here. What is the practical way if we as PR should adopt AI without losing the human judgment?
I'm so sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I would give one or two maybe suggestions about how you can start adopting and experimenting with AI. And hopefully these are really practical suggestions. They're things that I do in my organization and my team. I encourage my team and even myself, you have to brief AI really well, right? You have to tell it. You have to say, like, you are a PR professional. You know, give it a persona. Brief it exactly the way you would have briefed a PR and comms intern back in the day. You don't just say, here you go, off do this thing to another person, a junior person in the team. So you need to brief and use AI in that same way. So you really need to, you know, get it, give it as much information and input to try and get the outcome you want. That's what I've been experimenting with when it comes to, you know, usage of AI to varying degrees of success. Ultimately, though, to the point about the question about not losing the human judgment, I don't think we can afford to lose the judgment, or we will, because even when we do brief the AI properly, you know, as properly as we can, we get a outcome that we're satisfied with. It's still on us to validate that, to sanity check it, to quality check it, to make sure it's authentic, you know, use whatever words that we want before we then send that information to stakeholders, to clients, external to the company, to one of the other team members as well. So, you know, I think human judgment cannot be lost. We cannot afford as an industry for it to be lost as we use AI and experiment with it.
Thank you very much for that, Amrita. I think there's one more question that I would take for Satira. Can data rebuild trust once it's broken, or does it only help us understand the damage?
That's a very good question. So I would say data alone cannot rebuild trust. However, without data, you would be rebuilding blindly, right? So look at data as a patient who is sick. For instance, you have, you feel where the damage is a part of your tummy. It's paining you, but you don't know which, you don't know what is causing the severe pain, right? And you go to a diagnostic center. Look at data as that diagnostic center, which shows you what the issue is and tells you, okay, you have kidney stones, so this is what we are treating. But a damage without using data is having a tummy ache and taking a pill blindly without going to the doctor, without asking questions, without doing an x-ray. You are just taking drugs. You would cause more problems. So I would say, let us see data like that. Data alone cannot build trust, but with data, you know how, you know where the damage, how severe or how minor the damage is, and how to repair the damage, the things you would need to use to repair that damage. That's what I would say we should view data as, basically.
All right, thank you very much, Satira, for that. Before we pull today's event to a close, if there's any addition any of our speakers would like to chime in for today's session, a show of hands. If not, then we can close for today. All right, so thank you all for sharing your expertise and perspectives with us today. Today's conversation has shown us that algorithm and AI are constantly reshaping the communication space. The core pillars of our profession: trust, truth, intelligence, and even today we learned a few more: curiosity, credibility, the evolution of our frameworks working hand in hand with the change that currently exists. And Amrita emphasized the need for us to stay grounded in certain tenets that exist within measurement and evaluation. On behalf of the organizers today, P+ Measurement Services, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, and to everyone who joined this session to listen, who asked questions, who contributed positively to making this a positive and successful one. Thank you all so very much. We hope the insights shared today continue to inspire us on how to approach communications in the evolving era. Thank you all so very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you for
Thank you.
taking the time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.